As the country reopens, a new normal is taking shape. So which changes are temporary and which are likely to be permanent? And more importantly, how might the answers impact your retirement goals and your financial plans for the future? It's that time again, time to tune out the hype and focus on the facts. Facts that matter to you, the income generation. Let's get started. Get ready to separate reality from myth.
Joining me right now is Sound Income Strategies founder and CEO David Scranton.
They've created a new type of inflation, and although markets have always been an emotional place, they seem to be even more of an emotional place these days.
Jeffrey Small, market watcher, is with me.
Stock market dynamic is getting ready to significantly change.
So let's bring in our co-host, Jeff Small, president of Arbor Financial Services, and also the brand ambassador for the Retirement Income Store. Throughout this coronavirus pandemic, analysts have been speculating about the so-called new normal that would emerge when the health crisis is actually over. We've talked about it quite a bit on the show, in fact. Although we're not completely past the health crisis yet, a picture of what the new normal might look like is becoming a bit clearer. In areas of society ranging from education to business and retail, changes prompted by necessity during the pandemic are now becoming oftentimes methods of choice. In fact, the changes taking shape can be cultural, they can be economic, they can be psychological. And the emergence of this new normal is likely to have an impact on the way that many Americans prepare for and spend their retirement. We'll talk about these possible impacts right here on today's show, focusing on what you need to know to prepare yourself practically and financially for what we call the new corona economy. Joining us will be entrepreneur and CEO of Ripple Connects, Joe McKenzie. Joe has built his business mentoring individuals going through a career transition. We'll also get important insights, of course, from my co-host, Jeff Small. But before we bring out Jeff, let's take a closer look at just how and why the coronavirus crisis has actually shaped this, quote, new normal. You know, it's no secret that every crisis throughout history has led to permanent changes. It's a big part of how a society progresses and evolves, right? Well, policy changes put in place after the Great Depression and the financial crisis were intended, for example, to help with recovery, but also to help guard against similar crises in the future. The same is true of changes that we put in place after 9/11. You know, as a society, we accept and embrace certain changes because we know that they're good for all of us in the long run. And very often, changes that emerge at the end of a crisis were kind of sort of already in progress before the crisis actually occurred. And that's certainly true with some form of the changes emerging from this pandemic. For example, brick and mortar retail stores had already been struggling for years as internet technology improved and online shopping became easier and more popular. That trend, of course, increased dramatically during the pandemic for obvious reasons. Many stores were forced to shut down completely, conduct business exclusively online for 2 to 3 months. Consumers who had never shopped online before were forced to do so. And you know what? Many learned to like it. Now, does this mean we're heading toward a completely new normal where old-fashioned retail stores don't exist at all and everybody shops from home all the time? Of course not. People go shopping not just to acquire things, but because it's a social activity they enjoy. Many are eager to get back to their favorite shops and boutiques so much that they've been willing to shop wearing face masks as the economy carefully reopens. So will the new normal include an even greater percentage of retail revenue being generated online rather than in stores? Almost certainly. That change has drivers that hit all three of the categories I cited: cultural, psychological, and economic. And it was already in the process of occurring before the pandemic hit. So it stands to reason that it'll be a permanent part of the new normal. And that's why job openings for warehouse workers, delivery drivers, telemarketers all rose during the pandemic, even as millions of people were being laid off. These openings are expected to remain strong in this new corona economy. So what are some other permanent or some other long-term changes we can expect? And how might some of the economic and cultural changes we're seeing affect your retirement? We'll talk about that more on the show coming up in just a bit. Now it's time to welcome my good friend and co-host, Jeff Small, president of Arbor Financial Services. a retirement income store located in Melbourne, Florida. He's also the brand ambassador for the Retirement Income Store and Amazon best-selling author of the book, Turning Financial Planning Right Side Up. Hit #1 in his category on Amazon, as Jeff always likes to remind me that my book only made it to #2 and his made it to #1. Isn't that right, Jeff?
Yes, Dave, that's true. I beat you there again, just like I've been right about the markets the last 2 months.
Well, today I want to talk a little bit about the job market and what we're seeing, because one of the things that concerns me is there is a disparity now. It seems like the middle class, maybe even the lower middle class, are suffering worse with job loss. The people who are maybe upper middle class tend to be faring better. So I worry about some of the people that are members of the income generation that are working in retail, that are working in stores, or maybe that were bartending or waiting tables or doing things like that are industries that might be slow to come back to the level that they were before. I mean, what are you seeing? What industries are you seeing, even in your own clientele and people you talk with, that are kind of the hardest hit with job losses?
Well, I can only speak to the extent of my economic range here locally, but I will tell you that we have seen people in the healthcare industry lose their jobs. We've seen people in the high-tech industry and even in the space industry lose their jobs. And so we know that the services department, the service components of our job infrastructure have been hammered the worst, though, like you said. So there's a big disparity there. But across the board, we've seen job destruction since this post-corona, scenario virus that we've had so far.
Just recently, I actually talked to one person who actually got laid off, and she called in to talk with us because her severance had ended, and now she's thinking, okay, I need income, right? So, of course, she knows if you need income, you call Dave and Jeff, right? But I've had 2 other conversations with people that actually left. One had been a teacher for over 40 years, and with this whole thing saying, even if we go back in September, I'm not sure I want to go back with the increased risk. So she retired from teaching. I had a doctor who, a client of mine for several years now, much to his wife's dismay, didn't want to retire. He loved what he did. He wanted to keep working. He's got this perfect deal. He's working in medicine 3 days a week. And he called me up in the middle of all this and said, let's get tuned up for retirement. It's too risky to my health now. I need to get out. I need to get out. So I'm seeing a lot of that too. But those aren't my worries, because those are the people who are ready, who can afford to retire. You got a big teacher's pension, you can retire. You're a doctor, you plan for it, you can retire. I'm more concerned about this person that gets outsourced, that gets laid off and can't, and then is scrambling because that person planned to work for a decade or more longer.
Yeah, it's definitely a shock when you notice that you don't have a job anymore and then you needed the income, or you're not ready for retirement and now you've got to kind of reinvent yourself and hope that you can find work. It's going to be very difficult for those people to replace what they've got. But, getting back to your original comment about the voluntary side of retirement, corporations are launching massive programs for voluntary retirees or people to retire voluntarily. So it's happening on both fronts. And so they're looking to consolidate, reduce expenses, and then what's going to happen, Dave. They're not going to rehire the people that are actually retiring, or they're letting go. So we're going to see a massive downsizing transformation occur in the corporate America over the next 24 to 36 months until we see eventually what's going to happen with the economy and growth, and is the virus going to continue to expand? Is it going to get worse? Is it going to get better? There's so many things we don't know.
Okay, so let's say that my employer, Dave Scranton, offers me a package, right? Because I want to get rid of myself. How does Dave Scranton, the employee, decide? What do you tell people? What steps to go through in trying to decide, should I take the package, should I not, and so on?
Well, I think that the majority of people will take the package because there's a much larger likelihood that if they don't do a furlough package, if that's what's been offered to them, or a pre-retirement package, they're not going to get the same benefits. So on a furlough scenario, they're going to choose the furlough every time because there's a chance they could get laid off in advance of that furlough ending. But from a voluntary retirement package, if retirement is right for them, it's not quite as rigid a choice. They can not take the package, or they can take the package and roll the dice. Depends on what their situation is.
Yeah, they have to look and see, can we do this? Can we afford to retire today, even with the extra money that's offered in the, so-called package? So, how about when the PPP stuff expires? This isn't for big employers, but small or medium-sized employers who took the PPP money have to keep people on to September 30th. So, how about some people that maybe it's clients that are, preparing. I mean, how do you help them prepare? They're preparing for retirement in 5 or 10 years. They're in an industry. Their employer took the PPP money. They might be there for 5 or 10 more years, or they might be there till September 30th. I mean, how do you tell them to best prepare for all their contingencies?
It's funny you bring that up because there's a huge debate politically on both sides of the aisle about what they should do with the remaining PPE money. There's about $140 billion left in that allocation for small businesses, and they really need to reduce that down to specifically really small businesses, because small businesses on Main Street are getting hurt the worst. And if you drive through the areas that you live across the country, you're going to see that restaurant that you liked, that was your favorite restaurant, doesn't even have 25% of the customer flow that they had pre-corona. So they're not going to be around in 6 months, and those people are going to lose their jobs, and that's going to happen to the entire industry as one example. So the PPP will only cover us so far, Dave. And like you said, to the end of September, then the real numbers will hit.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to ask Joe McKenzie about this coming up in just a couple minutes, but bottom line, in the last 20 seconds we have, so you're literally with your clients going through and looking at their industries for whom they work and saying, okay, these people, I need to make sure they're prepared for all contingencies, whereas these people are more likely to be okay.
Correct.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's great. Well, like I said, we had 20 seconds left, and of course the word correct only eats up about a half a segment. So, but we're ready now to do a little commercial break. So you stay with us, and we'll be right back here with much more, and our special guest Joe McKenzie coming up on the Income Generation. We'll be right back. I'm David Scranton. As we reopen the economy, a renaissance has begun in the world of investing. If you or your advisor are not prepared for the new corona economy, you could be left behind. You don't have to cross your fingers and toes hoping for growth in this unpredictable stock market. There is a more conservative way, and that is to invest for income without all the stock market risk.
Call the Retirement Income Store today at 888-888-4176 for your free Retirement Income Kit. Call 888-888-4176 now.
For behind-the-scenes photos, retirement planning tips, and upcoming giveaways, follow the Income Generation Show on Facebook. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel to watch video clips, guest interviews, and to catch up on past episodes.
So far, we've talked about the new normal that's taking shape in the retail world, which likely means a continuation of more online sales and home delivery as opposed to traditional storefronts. But here are a few other areas where permanent, or should we say very long-term changes are emerging from this crisis. Education. From correspondence courses to online classes, learning outside of the traditional classroom is certainly nothing new. However, new technologies and methods that are embraced by teachers during the pandemic have made it more viable than ever before. From public schools to universities, educators have found new ways to keep students engaged virtually. The students have also become increasingly comfortable with that approach. Even financial advisors who prioritize investor education, including myself, have made a successful shift to online workshops and seminars. And we'll talk about this more in just a bit also. So does this mean schools and classrooms are going to disappear in the new normal? Well, of course not. Does it mean the trend toward online teaching and learning is likely to keep growing and improving in this new corona economy? Almost certainly. At the same time, the trend toward businesses holding more meetings remotely and allowing employees to work from home is also likely to keep growing. Those concepts weren't really new before the pandemic, but as with shopping and learning, they became more widely used out of necessity. Many companies have been surprised to discover how productive remote meetings can actually be thanks to conferencing formats like Zoom and GoToMeeting. Plus, they're saving a ton of money on travel costs. And what's more, new technologies now allow for a wide variety of work roles to be done from home. This can save companies overhead costs while allowing many workers to perform their jobs, in some cases, more efficiently. Again, this doesn't mean the traditional office setting is likely to disappear anytime soon. It does mean, however, that the trend toward more online meetings and telecommuting will probably be part of this new normal. And finally, did you have to see a doctor in March or April? If so, there's a good chance you did so online. Telehealth, the practice of connecting patients to health providers remotely, has also become much more popular thanks to the pandemic, for obvious reasons. And naturally, not every health issue can be addressed online, but overall, analysts agree that telehealth is another trend that's likely to remain permanent. As we've talked about on previous shows, all of these changes have a wide range of economic impacts, including dramatically boosting the fortunes of certain companies and certain industries. Now it's time to bring back my co-host, Jeff Small, along with our guest, Joe McKenzie, the founder of Ripple Connects. He's also the co-host of the New Beginnings radio program. Joe built his business mentoring people going through career transition. He was recently cited in the Amazon bestseller, Ultimate Success: Break the Chains of Mediocrity to Transform Your Life. Joe, great to have you back here once again on The Income Generation. Well, it's almost a year since we had you last time, and oh my goodness, what a difference a year makes, does it not?
Absolutely. What's happened since February of this year is, I don't think anybody saw that coming.
No, it's unprecedented in many, many ways. And I know we've got lots of questions for you about like corporate America and which parts it's affecting and not affecting. So Jeff?
Well, sure. And thanks for being here today. We're happy to get your input on some things. I think I wanted to talk to you about what's going on in this post-corona world and some of the trends that are occurring, whether it's, working from home, shopping online, conducting business from home in general. But what we're seeing on our side of the equation is we're seeing a tremendous amount of corporate Americans being furloughed and given the choice to either be furloughed. If they don't get furloughed and choose that option, they could potentially be laid off. So tell us what you see happening in corporate America today with the jobs picture, because from my perspective, this is a very undercurrent that nobody really talks about or measures in terms of how it can impact the economy, the markets, and valuations down the line. So what do you see happening in corporate America as we transition in this post-corona environment and folks are working from home and corporations are cutting back?
I agree with you, Jeff. The furloughed workers, that is still being played out as we're watching this. So I think it's critical to see what happens in the next couple months to see what happens to furloughed workers. I think we're still in the early stages of this new corona economy. If there is anything that comes about fall, I think corporations are holding back a bit, and furloughed workers could see an impact that maybe that they are laid off. And I think corporations are holding back, playing it close to vest during this time to see how it plays out. Do you agree with that?
Oh, I completely agree with that. I think corporations are, circling the wagon, so to speak, and bracing for the economic shock because we don't know what the real growth rate in the economy is going to occur, and what that's going to be yet. Everybody's anticipating growth, and so they're taking a very defensive posture at this time.
I agree with that. That's what I've been seeing. I know a number of people in corporate world. Some have taken furloughs, and some that are still in there. But that's what I'm taking away too. It's a very close to the vest strategy for the corporate world to see how this all plays out later this year.
Yeah, it seems to me as though that's one way that this is different from the financial crisis. In 2008, things seemed a bit more transparent. But if what other parallels or maybe items of contrast do you see between the financial crisis in 2008 and now?
I think biggest thing that stands out to me is I'm not sure everybody knows what it's going to look like a year from now. I think back in the financial crisis, more people were kind of waiting it out, and they would return to what they expected or what they'd seen before. The fact is that we're working from home, we're telecommuting. That might be the new face of the corporate world. We're still waiting to see what's going to look like. And that's the biggest contrast, that we're not waiting for that normal to return. We're anticipating and watching for that new normal and what that looks like, trying to get that clarity in regards to what it looks like a year from now. And I think that's one of the biggest differences from the financial crisis.
Which industries are you seeing now are the people coming to you with the most concern, saying, look, I have to find something, my industry is really problematic. And I don't mean short-term stuff where it'll come back, but more long-term where people are really considering, maybe baby boomers, members of the income generation are considering, after all these years being in one industry, maybe making a switch to the other. Which of those real problematic industries, at least according to people's perceptions?
I think leisure and hospitality, the fact that the restaurant, the airline, all those are going to change completely. They're not going to look like they were. And so if anybody's in that industry, I would recommend that they be nimble enough and be open to looking at other industries that are stronger, telecommunications, that supply and logistics. You don't have to go very far to see the operation of this country driving through our neighborhoods. Well, that takes a complete team of professionals that know what they're doing, that can lead these organizations through this time. So leisure and hospitality is one that I don't think will ever return to normal in my estimation. And we have to look for those stronger sectors if we are going to make that shift. And that could be telecommunications, that can be that supply logistics areas that I recommend, especially for the ones that are seeing the most disruptions in their own industry.
Yeah, so right after the commercial break, I want to talk to you about retraining, because you take somebody, member of the income generation, maybe mid-50s or older, and they have to get retrained for like telecommunications. That's a lot to ask. So I want to talk to you about some of that retraining as soon as we take a break here. And I'd like you to stay with us also. We'll be back here in a moment with many more words of wisdom from our good friend Joe McKenzie coming up on the income generation. We'll be right back. Hi, I'm David Scranton. As we reopen America during these difficult times, we're all practicing social distancing. But at the Retirement Income Store, we're also practicing stock market distancing. You don't have to cross your fingers and toes hoping for growth in this unpredictable stock market. There is a more conservative way, and that is to invest for income without all the stock market risk.
Call the Retirement Income Store today at 888-888-4176 for your free Retirement Income Kit. Call 888-888-4176 now.
If you're near or in retirement, head over to theincomegeneration.com and download your special report written specifically for the needs of the income generation. Again, those born before 1966. I'm David Scranton, and you've been watching The Income Generation. Many of the online tools that have emerged as part of this new normal in recent months are not really new. They've simply become much more widely used out of necessity. Naturally, that means that the number of Americans who've gotten comfortable using them has also increased dramatically, and that includes older Americans. Surveys show that people over 60 now are regularly using formats such as Zoom and Skype to do everything from staying connected with friends and family to actually hosting events. In some instances, they can even use these services to attend concerts and to play games. Also, in keeping with the new normal trend toward online learning, they're using technology to stay informed and to get educated. There have never been more opportunities to learn online. Today, you have instructional blogs and YouTube videos that teach you everything from how to fix your lawnmower to how to play the piano. In addition to taking advantage of those resources, many older Americans are working toward advanced degrees through popular online programs now available from top-rated universities. Some of these include UMass, Boston U, Florida State, Indiana University, the University of Arizona, just to name a few. Many people in or nearing retirement are also taking advantage of the increased number of financial workshops and classes now available online. I mentioned this earlier. These programs, like other forms of online teaching, have certain qualities that benefit attendees in many ways, which are well suited to the new normal that's taking shape. For example, there's no travel involved, and often no need to juggle your calendar. With on-demand courses, people can not only attend from the comfort of their home, but they can do so at any time that's convenient for them. With online classes or workshops, attendees can engage the instructor and ask questions just as they would at an in-person event through interactive tools like chat and messenger. With financial workshops, attendees may also feel less buying pressure than they otherwise might in a physical setting. And best of all, the virtual format allows attendees to really focus and absorb the important information being presented. This is crucial. With the economy and the financial markets more uncertain than ever before, there's a lot you need to know in order to help protect your money and to keep your retirement on track. And we'll talk about this more in a bit. Now it's time to bring back my good friend and co-host, Jeff Small, along with our guest, Ripple Connect's founder and entrepreneur, Joe McKenzie. Joe, thanks for sticking around.
My pleasure.
So Joe, many of our viewers and listeners on the income generation that were planning on working a few more years might find themselves in a position now with this new corona economy that they might be forced to retire or leave the private sector and their job early. What advice would you have for them at this stage of their lives, a few years from retirement, they weren't quite ready to retire, they wanted to work a little longer, to retool themselves and re-embrace a new skill set so they can make themselves marketable as we transition through this new economy?
Absolutely. I think the first thing you have to realize that everybody has a skill that transfers, the transferable skills. And some of the most sought after transferable skills in this economy are the creativity, the teamwork, the critical thinking. But I think communications, the ability to communicate, that's a skill that can transfer to finance, to the nonprofit, to you name the industry. Those four that I just named are skills that are sought after. So it may not be so much retraining as much as the individual realizing that a skill can transfer. So I know someone that was in the office equipment industry who is now pivoted to be a director in the nonprofit. Well, the skills that that person had in that industry applied perfectly to that nonprofit. So Jeff, to answer your question is, everybody should learn to recognize what their transferable skills are. Do your research on what the most sought after skills are, that communication piece, that critical thinking, creativity, teamwork. Those are all things corporations are looking for. You talk about supply and logistics, and they are running at peak capacity. They need people that can hit the ground running. So it may not be completely retraining, Jeff. It may be just them knowing their skills to self-market themselves to that industry and where they can hit the ground running and what's in it for the employer because of those skills that transfer.
So basically, take their existing skills, try to enhance them if they can, not necessarily retool, but make themselves marketable in that sense, and combine that with a job search into the areas that actually have job expansion going on now. I said that's the best advice you'd basically concur with at this time?
Absolutely. And that's where someone's going to get a lot of traction because those corporations are looking for people that are seasoned, experienced, know how to get through adversity, along with those transferable skills that I mentioned. Corporations that are in demand now really need people that can hit the job running. They can train them on software. They can train them on protocol. But you think about it, if you bring in different people from different backgrounds, embracing your own cognitive diversity or the difference in how you process information and the experience you have, that might be a great value add for that industry to bring your different mindset to their team, because you make those teams smarter by bringing a different background, a different way that you've processed information in your career. So I think that's someone's superpower, that they can bring that cognitive diversity to a new corporation, a new industry.
So give us an example. We talked about the hospitality industry. So let's say you were a flight attendant, or you were a waiter or a waitress or a bartender, or you were somebody who was selling to corporations, let's say conferences and events at a hotel. You know, how are those service-oriented skills? Well, give us an idea of some industries where those service-oriented skills might be transferable.
Well, if we're going to look at some of the industries that are doing well, you know, that supply logistics, if you can have an account rep or someone that has good communication skills, good follow-up skills, good written skills, listening skills, and you can apply that into, you know, high-level customer service or account management, those are what industries are looking for. That proof by example that you've been able to communicate with someone, either on the phone or in person. Those are skills today that that's one example that a corporation would say, okay, I see someone that's had to deal with difficult people all day long, communicate effectively. I could see them in a position where they're going to represent our company because of their transferable skills.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, is this what you mean when you talk about hidden job markets today?
Hidden job markets are essentially the unadvertised job markets. Many companies do not put those jobs out, but there's also people that will be not looking for those strong industries or those companies because they're used to their normal and they may look to go to a competitor. I highly encourage someone that's been in an industry that's struggling to realize what their transferable skills are, and then know often that that hidden job market is going to be leveraged through your bench of advocates. Last summer, David, I talked about building that bench of advocates.
I remember.
Advocates are going to be your eyes and ears because they know firsthand what you've done, your leadership, your motivation, the ability to work as a team. Those are all things that can help self-market you, but the bench of advocates, gentlemen, are what gives you that opportunity to go in that hidden job market because they know who you are and they can they can fill in the gaps of a resume or a LinkedIn profile.
Yeah, I was just going to say, sounds like an increase in the use of LinkedIn to me, with people using that, and I think that's great advice. Great advice, son. We need to leave it there for now. Joe, thanks so much for being back. Next time, let's not make it wait a whole year. Fair enough?
Fair enough, gentlemen. Thank you for your time today.
All right, Joe, thank you. And you stay with us. We have much more coming up right here on The Income Generation in just a moment. We'll be right back.
Investing for income? The idea has grown in popularity over the last several years due to today's volatile stock market. But if you're at or near retirement age, it's no longer just how much you've saved, it's about maximizing and protecting your life savings while minimizing your risk from market ups and downs. David J. Scranton's new book, The Retirement Income Story, is here to help baby boomers face the challenges of investing in this age of economic uncertainty. Visit theretirementincomestory.com to learn more.
Welcome back to The Income Generation. I'm David Scranton. I'm here with my good friend and co-host, Jeff Small. So Jeff, you know, I love what Joe had to say about retraining within your basic skill set. In other words, not professionally your skill set, but are you a critical thinker? Or are you more sales and marketing? Or are you more service oriented? I love that. But you think that employers will really be that open-minded, or are they so set in their ways of looking for people within their specific industry that as much as it's a good thought, it might not work?
Well, I think that, you know, the best skill set to have if you need to find another job because you've been let go as a result of what's happening in the downsizing of corporate America is communication. Communication is what corporations are looking for. They don't care if you have a 4-year degree in English or a master's degree in business. If you can communicate well, That's the number one thing, because those people are trainable. So that, Joe was a little weak on that side of the equation. I would have enhanced the communicative component of what people need to do and emphasized that tremendously. But they have to also match their skill set to the opportunities that are out there. That plus communication is really what they need to do, Dave.
And that's great for certain things like the sales side, the service side, absolutely critical, 100%. But, we talked about critical thinking. So, okay, you're an engineer in one industry, you're a critical thinker. Could that work out of the engineering field? Can you use those critical thinking skills in another field? And whereas you might be able to, the question is that other industry now going to look at hiring somebody who's been an engineer for 30 years when maybe they've got enough people who are laid off in their own industry they could bring in that know the industry proper? That's kind of the nature of my concern, if that makes sense.
Well, yeah, I mean, of course they're going to pull from the well that they like to draw from, that they've always had success. They're not going to stick a round peg in a square hole. Putting an engineer in a communicative position, that's a round peg in a square hole, Dave. What are you thinking?
No, in a critical thinking position, because it's just another example of critical thinking. For example, can you take an engineer and put them in a low-level position, maybe in an accounting firm, where they don't need to know a lot of accounting, they just need to be a critical thinker? That's the nature of my question.
Okay, well, I understand. That could work. You never know. If they get the right scores on their predictive indexes and they interview well and they've got a potential for critical thinking. I mean, engineers see things generally as, a construct and analytics. And so I don't know, they might get a little mired down in the minutia, Dave.
So in the first block, and I know you're getting older, so you might not be able to remember that far back in the show, but in the first block, I said to you, look, we could tell kind of sort of certain industries that got a lot of PPP money. And as a result of that, they need to keep people employed till September 30th. And after that, the gloves are off. They want to lay somebody off October 1st. They can keep their PPP money. They get the loan forgiven. So it's seeming to be a little bit more obvious, even like Joe said, that there's industries that probably won't come back. So are you able to go through your clientele, or at least recommend to your clients that those are in their most sensitive industries whose companies may have taken PPP money, where to say, look, you really need to have a contingency plan in case you do get laid off in October, 5-10 years before you plan to retire?
Okay, Dave, I'm going to answer your question. Yes. We've done that with clients that are in those scenarios, and the smaller businesses whose jobs are potentially in danger as a result of the lack of economic productivity that might come if the economy doesn't come back to where it was. So yes, we've done that. Have you done that, Dave? Have you had those meetings yet?
We have, and the problem is it's not cut and dry. You don't know all the companies that are actually doing this. And I'm talking to people a lot about it, like when I do, we're doing a lot of virtual webinars now to educate people, and I'm talking about that to anybody who attends, saying, look, if you're in one of those industries and you know who you are, you need to think of plan B. You need to think of the contingency. Don't have a false sense of security because you're working today because you got the PPP money. You always got to think about, okay, what is my plan B? But it's just like our finances. I think in closing, Jeff, it's important for our listeners and our viewers to realize that they need to think of their money that way. And I think hopefully everybody learned this after the 1990s, when all those financial plans that, remember, you and I would see them and we'd cringe, showing you're going to get 10%, 12% growth right up until retirement. And a lot of people didn't have a plan B in case it didn't work. And I think right now the most important message we could send in last 20 seconds we have in the segment is basically that everybody needs to have a plan B and C, correct?
There's no doubt. Plan B, everyone should have one. Doesn't matter how safe your job is or what stage you are towards retirement, or even in retirement, you need a plan B for your money too. So you got plan Bs across the board, Dave. I completely agree with that.
On your job and retirement. Here's a great example. So people inside of Wall Street that I know, what they'll do oftentimes, their whole job is based on the risk of the stock market. They could get laid off. So what do they do with their money? They go out and buy bonds with their money because they don't want their investments to be at risk just because their job's at risk with the market. So we need to leave it there for this block. Stay with us. We have more coming up right here in just a moment on the income generation. We'll be right back.
I actually grew up in Pennsylvania. I spent the first about 13 years of my life there. I'm actually from Clark Summit, which is right next to Scranton. I had just moved down to Orlando, so I was just starting my third year, and I was in my family medicine rotation. And those rotations are about 6 weeks, and that's about when it started. I just started getting some weird things. I noticed that the week before my final exam for that rotation, the family medicine rotation, I really started to get a lot of pain in my right leg. I was just telling myself, there's no way that this is a blood clot. I'm 25, I'm healthy, I don't have any risk factors. And as that week went on, it just started to get worse. I started feeling just really bad. Actually, while they were diagnosing me with the blood clot, while they were doing the test for it, I started getting lung pain or chest pain and coughing, things like that. And then, so right after they found that blood clot in my leg, they took me in for a chest CT, and they found pulmonary embolisms in my lungs too. Then it really kind of got serious because, I think I got pretty lucky that we caught those pretty early. I don't think it wasn't actually a big one. They were very small, diffuse throughout my lungs, which is good because those can be very deadly. And so once that happened, it became a little bit more serious, and I was admitted into the hospital and got vascular surgery done, got put on some medication to help break up that clot. And it was then when one of my doctors noticed something weird on one of my blood tests. They did a little bit of extra testing, and that's when they found out that I had acute lymphoblastic leukemia. I went through 3 rounds of chemotherapy. After the first 2 rounds, I went into remission, and then that was when we decided to do a bone marrow transplant. So I did 1 more round of chemotherapy just to kind of make sure everything was kind of gone. And then in October of 2017, I went back into the hospital, got a couple of days of high-dose chemotherapy, a couple of days of total body irradiation, and then I got a transplant from my father, actually. It's basically just like a 10-week fundraising competition. What they do is they find a boy and a girl who survived leukemia or some other type of blood cancer, and basically we fundraise in their honor. The campaign itself it's a 10-week fundraising campaign. I've got team members, about 10 team members or so, I think, right now, and we're just trying to raise a little bit of money to help the Leukemia Lymphoma Society basically help other patients. A lot of the drugs that have actually been used for cancer patients, specifically blood cancer patients, have been funded in some way by Leukemia Lymphoma Society. But they do so much more than that. It's a lot of just patient support, helping patients get to their treatments, helping them get to the hospital, back and forth like that. Healthy, friendly competition. Just supporting the 2 little kids who are local, who've gone through a lot of stuff.
I'd like to thank our guest, Joe McKenzie, and also, of course, my co-host, Jeff Small, for joining me today here on The Income Generation. Most importantly, though, I want to thank you, our new and returning viewers. Overall, most people don't particularly like change, and that's especially true as we get older. We kind of sort of become set in our ways. We prefer to keep doing things the way we've always done them because it's comfortable. Change can be inconvenient, let's face it. Change can be painful. Very often change can be scary. However, it's also true that change is sometimes forced upon us. We don't have a choice in the matter, and as painful and scary as it might be, we must change or get left behind. And the good news is that human beings are also extremely adaptable. Whether we like change or not, when forced to do it, most of us rise to the challenge. We're seeing that again in a variety of ways in the wake of this pandemic. People of all ages are embracing new technologies and expanding their ideas about what it means and what it takes to socialize, to conduct business, as well as to teach and learn in this new corona economy. We're getting comfortable with these changes to an extent that many are likely to be part of this new normal that emerges even after the COVID-19 threat ends. That's great because change in response to a crisis is an important part of how a society grows and progresses. But remember, some changes taking shape may create significant new risks to your retirement goals, as well as new opportunities. It's important to understand those changes and, if appropriate, to adapt your financial strategy to them, preferably with the help of the right advisor. In my experience, that means an advisor who prioritizes investor education and who specializes in asset protection and retirement income. Stay safe, and thanks for watching. If you're close to retirement and you really want to know how to protect and maximize your money, it's essential that you stay informed and up to date. And of course, as you know, right here is where you can do it on the Income Generation. I'm David Scranton, and we'll see you next week. If you're near or in retirement, head over to theincomegeneration.com and download your special report written specifically for the needs of the income generation, again, those born before 1966. I'm David Scranton, and you've been watching The Income Generation. We'll see you all next Sunday.